Good morning, everyone, and welcome to BizNet Software's webinar, ERP Step Allocation in Excel, powered by BizNet Software. My name is Floyd Stanley. I'm the Partner Enablement Manager at BizNet Software, but, you know, like so many of us these days, that title doesn't really explain what I do for a living. I'm kind of a technical marketing guy. I push our software to the limits. I create little movies. I come up with little points, proofs of capabilities, and one of them has been this idea of step allocation in Excel from your ERP. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, we originally advertised this webinar as for nonprofit applications, and specifically using the Blackbaud and Intact ERPs. And, you know, thank you so much for registering, those who did, but we didn't get the breadth of the audience that we really wanted to touch. And so what we're going to do is certainly we're going to live up to the expectations of those folks who originally registered, but we're also going to expand the scope a bit. I have just a few introductory slides, kind of give you an idea of what our agenda is today. And most of this will be product demo. I know you folks want to see the product in action, and I hope, we have some really good examples. A couple of notes as we get started, the first of which is that this session is being recorded. Everybody who's online today will get an email from me, hopefully this afternoon, with a link to this recording, and I'll also get it out to folks who registered but didn't show up for whatever reason. So that's coming. The second thing is that all of the phones are on mute, and you know, we do that just so that we can maintain a flow of the presentation, but I'll certainly open it up for questions at the end. Please use the questions box on the GoToWebinar screen. So we're going to start simply and then expand. Allocation is as much of an art as it is a science. Certainly there's raw data that you can use, such as number of transactions. And so, for example, if you wanted to allocate general overhead costs like printing expenses or office space, you know, you could allocate that by numbers, like by numbers of employees or by numbers of transactions by department. And that's really pretty simple. And so that's where we're going to start, just give you an idea of how to do that using BizInsight from BizNet Software. And then we'll get a little bit more sophisticated, and that is resolve transactions that have been unallocated and do that by department. Now, at BizNet, you know, we've built our business on financial reporting, and in financial reporting you generally have static rows and static columns. I mean, the static rows are the accounts and the static columns are current month, previous month, year to date, things that can really be pretty easily automated. But allocations are often not static. They're absolutely dynamic. I may have an employee that works 5 hours one month on a particular project and 27 hours next month on a diversity of projects. And so that doesn't easily fit into a static horizontal and vertical report environment. And so that's going to be what we'll spend most of our time on. And then also talk about how BizBroadcast can integrate with your ERP upload templates. A number of ERPs allow for uploads from Excel. Fortunately, some of them have specific templates to do that, and BizBroadcast can help you with that process, particularly in those instances where that upload is dependent on a different file format than Excel, such as good old-fashioned comma-separated values, CSV. So why are we here? Well, the problem, and this has been shown to us in survey after survey, is that getting information from your ERP into a format that you can use is often a very, very manual process. Copy, paste, or export, import, clean up the data, filter and aggregate it, format it, finally push out a finished report, often have to create different versions of that report to send out to different people. And so, that is just a really time-consuming process. So why do you do it? Well, it's because, the information is worth that cost. Now, in terms of allocation, there is another much more significant issue involved, and that is a number of users have told us that their ERP system doesn't necessarily do those allocations automatically for them, which means that they have to go through this export, import, copy, paste, clean, filter, aggregate. And so what we're going to show today is how to use BizNet's engines, the Biz connectors to get the data, and then BizInsight to put that data in such a format that you can analyze it, and then finally BizBroadcast so that you can distribute those reports. So that's our problem, and I have to say right up front, you folks are, many of you, very, very sophisticated users. You have access to a number of data tools and data analysis tools, dashboards and data visualization products of various kinds, and even in the SAP world, big data solutions like HANA, and then oftentimes data warehouses that allow you to bring all that together in some sort of a business intelligence package. What BizNet does, we're a complement to all those things. We use Excel, which just happens to be what you use every day. And so as a result, you're able to stay in the environment that you're most comfortable with, but at the same time take advantage of these truly extraordinary tools that are at your disposal and really work in the best of both worlds. So it's time for demonstration. I knew that you folks were waiting for that. You were saying, okay, let's go, let's get the demonstration on. And so let's do that. I am going to go to Excel, and we'll walk through some step allocation examples. Now, as I said at the beginning, it's often as much an art as it is a science. But in this example, we're going to try to be, we're not going to be artistic about this at all. We have, again, in this example, just $182,000 worth of transactions that need to be allocated across different accounts. This report is set up with some placeholders so that you can dynamically change the year, you can dynamically change the month, you can dynamically change the departments, And it's also got a little piece of Excel wizardry built into it so that only those departments that show real values are returned. And it is a formula that just eliminates 0 rows. As a matter of fact, we blogged on that at biznetsoftware.com in the blogs section and actually provided a little formula for that. So how does this come about? Well, we began by finding the information that's available to us. And that starts with a BizInsight function. If I want to expose this function, I go to the BizInsight Suite tab on the toolbar, and I choose Query Data. And this specific information is coming from Blackbaud Financial Edge. We're returning a sum of transactions year to date, and we're wanting to return the year-to-date net amount. We're using we're using a combination of cell references along with a really interesting parameter that is called in. The BizInsight 7 platform includes, equal, not equal, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to, like, which is something that I like because it allows you to point at a wildcard or to point at a text phrase surrounded by asterisks, in and not in. And so what we're looking for is in a department that is like 01. Well, excuse me, that is in 01. Now the reason that we're doing that is because this drop-down menu relates to a numeric display of what those actual department numbers are. And then finally, what our account code is. Well, this is the basis, this is the beginning of this step allocation process. But the rest of it is Excel. Just like we used a super function to return this information, similarly, we have 2 at the bottom so that professional fees and repairs and maintenance are being pulled from the ERP. But the rest of it is just Excel calculations. We're dividing this number against our basis. We're filling that calculation down. And then we're just thank you. Somebody had decided to mute me. I'm glad that they unmuted me. I'm sorry if there was a problem coming up before that. Strange. But our cost allocation here just, again, uses a simple Excel formula. And that's what drives all of our calculations. Since this is dynamic, if I choose all departments, and if I refresh the filter, you can see that not only does my table change, but all of that cost allocation by total of expenses changes. However, what about dealing with projects? And I'll show you another example here in just a moment that can show you how this kind of information becomes truly dynamic. But what if we're dealing with projects and the transactions that are being allocated to those projects on a more dynamic basis? And so, again, we have placeholders for the year, for the period, and for whatever specific department we're using. This time, however, we're bringing back a count of the transactions. And we want that to be a distinct count based upon the entries in just one column. Every column within the GL transactions table has an entry for transactions ID. And so, as a result, we can count them really quite easily. But we don't want to count them twice. Again, we're using Excel cell referencing to enter that specific project number. But we're getting a count whenever our segment 3 is like asterisk. And the reason is because asterisk is a wildcard, and that will return all of the values, all of the departments. It's also what allows us to make this table dynamic. Again, if I choose only one specific department, all of those numbers update. But there's a bit of the art involved in this one as well. And that is, how are we allocating these numbers of transactions? And I've talked to folks who sometimes just decide that within a given set of accounts, or within certain projects, or within certain warehouses, or certain fixed assets, they just decide to allocate those expenses or those receivables by a percentage. And so we've decided that development is going to get 20%, program services is going to get 30%, school and educational services come in with 40%, and then, of course, to make the numbers round out to 100, we provide a variable for missions to get just 10% of the transactions. Of course, these are always going to add up, and our allocation year-to-date, again, is just an Excel formula. Our basis number times our percentage of transactions number. The beautiful thing about this is that once you embed these, as you've seen a couple of times already, once you embed these within a tabular structure, you can do this kind of allocation using either hard and fast rules or using your own customized rules to drive everything on this page. So these have been pretty straightforward. The same is true with allocations against funds, or in the for-profit world, that would be against lines of business or against departments. The same kinds of calculations take place. Similarly, if we wanted to do those transaction calculations by the number of just sheer transactions, the percentage of those, and then using an Excel formula to figure out how much cost is a specific line item responsible for all of the funds, or for only an unrestricted fund, or only a temporarily restricted fund. And this is a beautiful report because there are no items to be allocated there. But now it gets more interesting. And this is where you get to see some of the magic actually happen step by step. within this specific ERP, some expenses are allocated by department. And that makes sense, and that makes your allocation problem go away really quickly. However, some expenses are not allocated to anybody. And specifically in this ERP, they're allocated to segment 00, which is nothing. So first of all, we can use BizInsight to find how many transactions have not been allocated to anyone. Sometimes you can find data that doesn't exist, and certainly you can find data that does exist. And so we're in the BizInsight Suite ribbon, and we want to query data. And remarkably, since this was the last query that I had open, most of the information is there, except that I was receiving a count from the table of transactions year to date and getting a count of transactions ID. I don't want a count of transactions ID. I want a sum of the year-to-date net amount. All of the rest of these parameters stay the same. My year is 2012, my period is 11, my project ID is a specific project. But wait a minute, this isn't what I wanted at all. Instead, what I want is 2012, 2011. I don't want to look at a specific project ID. And so I'll delete that filter. And I don't want to look at a segment 3 that is like anything. I want to look where segment 3 is equal to and I know that segment 300 is not aligned with any particular department. I say okay. I choose the cell that I want that to be placed in, and I have a number for all of the unallocated transactions year to date. The good news, though, is that if I need, I can drill down to that in either a table or a pivot table or a super table. A super table just includes the sort and filter objects at the top of the page. And so I see all of the companies that are involved, all of the account codes, and then segment 3 is none. So there is no departmental allocation here. If I need to get a count of those transactions, I merely go back to the BizInsight suite, and this time I want to count the transactions ID. All of the rest of the parameters are the same. I update that number, and it had been formatted for a, it had been formatted as counting. I just need a general number, and so that's my number of transactions. These are unallocated, and this is the amount. So how many of those transactions should be allocated to segment 3? Again, it's just a matter of choosing to query data, and instead of 00, my segment 3 now equals 02. I changed the cell reference to anchor the column. I still have a distinct count. I place that number, and so based upon the number of transactions and my basis for the amount incurred in those transactions, even though I only had 885 in development, we're going to be charged with the entire number until I just fill down these formulas. The point of this little example is that, as with so many things in the BizNet Excel suite, you can automate these kinds of activities. All you have to do the next time is choose another month, and all of these calculations will update for you because those are embedded within the parameters of these BizInsight super queries. Now, a number of you are saying right now, hey, I use BizInsight, I use BizNet, and I've never seen this stuff. Well, what you're seeing here is our new BizInsight version 7 product, and actually this is not even the newest release of that. Our developers are working feverishly to provide a 4th of July present to all of our existing users and an enticement for users to come in order to take advantage of not only the Excel functions that many of you who are currently using BizInsight are familiar with, but to expand it into this idea of being able to use a menu-driven query editor that returns information either as BizInsight functions, we call them super functions, or returns information in a tabular form. And here's an example. You know, again, we promised that this was going to be step allocations for ERPs, and so as a result, in this system I have SysPro available as well as Razor's Edge and Financial Edge. SysPro is very much specifically aligned with distribution and manufacturing companies. And so what I want to do is get an understanding of my work in process. To get this table, it's a matter of a drag and drop. I can choose to select specific columns or to select them all. And I want to make this one a super table just so that I can sort and filter and select. The purpose of this little illustration is that it delivers time required and time issued. I know that many of you deal with allocations by number of hours expended, maybe by number of hours on payroll, or number of hours required to complete a project, or number of hours billed against a specific project. And so the point of this exercise was that if you can get the raw data that quickly from your supporting ERP, can you imagine that you may be able to do more significant and more specific work more quickly? And I would suggest that the answer to that is yes. This is a Windows 10 image using Excel 2016 and our very soon to be released BizInsight 7.2. It looks different from the very beginning in the fact that it is load on demand. And it's also going to look very, very different in terms of this menu interface. But what I want to do is I want to provide an illustration of a truly dynamic method of allocating expenses. And so, since we have more detail in the general ledger, I'm going to bring over just a table of account balances, and using a table will be just fine. I'm going to pick a specific reporting period, and by the way, this is intact, and so this is absolute cloud data. I'm going to choose a month ended January 13. That's how Intact does its periods. I'm going to select the columns, and what I want are the account numbers and account titles, location, department, and our net balance. And for the purposes of this, that's all we'll return. But you can see that there are project IDs, customer IDs, vendor IDs, employee IDs, anything that you needed to do an allocation concerning, you should be able to bring back within this table. Again, this is a demonstration database, and so we don't have lots of data there. But I will add a filter because I don't want to see items where the net balance for that specific month is 0. And so I choose a not equal to, and I'll put my filter in, and I don't want to remove duplicates because I want to see multiple entries against a specific item. Make dynamic is very interesting because what that does is it allows these tables themselves to be dynamic. That's probably a step too far for this audience and this webinar. So instead, I'm going to bring back that information. And I have, down at the bottom of the screen, you can see that there are 583 lines in this specific table. I have the account number, the account title, a location number, a department number, and what our net balance is. And again, the interesting thing and the critical thing is that there are multiple entries against a specific account. Just like all Excel connections, this is considered a data range. And by default, it's preserving the column sort filter layout, the cell formatting, but I want to fill down the formulas in columns adjacent to data. And you'll see why in just a moment. The account number is interesting, but I really want to compare these things to an account title, and I want to create a column for percentage of total, and I also want to create a couple of columns to illustrate how you can put different kinds of data together in the same worksheet. Percentage of total, that's going to provide our allocation for this specific period. But let's say that you're pulling data that you have an export from ADP or from some other external data source that you want to make available as well. And you notice I didn't bring back the location names or the department names. So I'm going to bring back location names and department names. And a handy Excel formula comes into play at this point. And like many of you, I have it copied. And that is dividing a specific cell reference against all of the elements in column A from A2 and then all of the elements in column E. But I made a mistake and didn't delete that column. So now some of my most creative moments happen when I copy and paste. That is my percentage of the total allocations against that specific account for this specific reporting period. I'll turn that into a percentage, and then I'll use a couple of super functions. What I want to do is not find a table, but a function, and I want that to be from the listing of locations, and I want it to be a max, which in numeric terms would provide you the maximum value, but in text terms it's going to provide the location name when my filter is location ID is equal to, and we'll select location 100, anchor that column. My location name is corporate. I'm lazy, and so I can just copy that over, but instead of getting location name, I want to go to the listing of departments, get a max of the department when my department ID is equal to a cell reference. I'll overwrite that. Yes, I want to do that. And so now I have my percentage of total, my location name, and my department name. Now, why at the beginning did I go into the data range properties and say fill down formulas? Well, because of this. If I choose to refresh this table, I'm querying the data in the background. It brought in the new data, and it auto-filled all of those numbers. So, do these allocations add up? Well, let's see. We'll bring back all the 1,000 accounts, and remarkably enough, it delivered our results. So this will work anytime you have a list of parameters, and even if those parameters are going to be different on every reporting period, it will work and it will bring back the correct numbers. And if I want to change my reporting period to make it the month ended February 2013, it's going to retrieve that data from Intact and place it on the page. This will probably take about 30 seconds, but I will show you an element that will soon make your world hopefully even better. Again, it's retrieving data through the cloud. It's conforming to the specifications of the previous table. It's bringing that information in now. All of the other formulas filled down as appropriate, and I have my new month of data. Now I said, why is this interesting, and why is this perhaps going to make your life better? Well, this is an illustration, a listing of all of the data that is now in cache on this particular machine. Cache means memory. That means it's available to us. And if I select these two caches of account balances, you can see that one of them is for February 2013, one is for January 2013, and choose not to check for new data, that means that anytime another query tries to get that information from that particular data set, it'll say, January 2013 is long past. I don't need to go and check for new data from January 2013. That's a remarkable improvement. I mentioned that we also have a mechanism to use BizInsight to find these allocations and then use this broadcast to send them to people in a format that they can use for upload. And this is our Biz Broadcast distribution template. The newest version of it as well loads on demand instead of loading at startup. And here we are using a custom view, and that is a monthly allocations view from this specific worksheet. And if you look at the there we go. If we look at view and find custom views, there is a view here that is called allocation. And that view is to show only these column headers and to output them as a CSV. Now, if I had done this example directly in that template, some of those columns would have matched up. The way tables come together, not all of the columns would have matched up, but again, the point is that by outputting this as a CSV, you have absolutely universal compatibility with any system that accepts uploaded data. All right, well, I hope that was helpful. I have a few things to close. The first of which is, hopefully you've seen that this can help you solve this problem. Excel reporting takes a lot of time. You can't always drill into the numbers. Sharing those reports is arduous. BizConnector has pre-built real-time connections to a number of systems, and we're in the process of retrofitting our existing ERP implementations to make that happen. With BizInsight 7, you can drill into those numbers, get live interactive reports, and with BizBroadcast, you can share those reports. So what are our key takeaways of today before we get to the question? Number one, BizConnectors bring the data to you. If you only used the idea of a super table to bring back that sortable, filterable information, you might be ahead of where you are today. But when you add BizInsight, you enable true analysis. You enable yourself and your users to begin to play various scenarios against those numbers. And then finally, the product that the product that you use every day handles those step calculations, helps you find the basis, and then helps you find the total of the pool, and then automates that process of handling the percentages. Otherwise, I am going to say thanks so much for joining us today. All of us at BizNet Software truly appreciate your participation. We appreciate your business. We want to help you because we do intend to make Excel better. And hey, everybody, celebrate freedom this weekend. Bye now.